Don't forget to mute, Phil. Good evening. I'd like to call to order the meeting for Bedford Township for June 2nd, 2020. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. At this time, I'd look for approval of the agenda. Actually, before that, Mr. Bob Tinneberry, if you could open us up in prayer.
Sure. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we pray for your peace to settle across our nation tonight. We are grieved by all the things that have taken place, and yet we know that you are in control of all of it, and we just pray for your peace to settle on us. For the meeting tonight, we pray that you would give the decision makers wisdom, again, that you would give them courage, and that your wisdom would be evident in the decisions that they finally make. And we now pray these things in Christ's name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. At this time, I'd look for approval of the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda is submitted.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Steiner, seconded by Ms. Tinneberry. Ms. Hirschberger?
Never mind. Go ahead.
Any discussion? Seeing none, would you call the roll, please, Ms. Hirschberger?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Mrs. Janasek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Item 3, the consent agenda. The agenda committee recommends to A, approve and place on file the minutes of the May 19th, 2020 regular meeting of the Bedford Township Board.
Motion to approve the consent agenda is presented.
Support.
Okay, motion and supported by Mr. Clemens. Discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Janasek?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 4, presentations. We have none, so number 5 would be public comment. Comments limited to 2 minutes for board agenda items. So call on in on the screen. We'll give you 30 seconds with Buckeye Cable's backup. Okay, George, anybody calling in? Okay, seeing none, let's move on to staff reports. Approval of ordinance department courtesy notice for a violation. I'm pretty sure Ms. Tinneberry, Mr. Steiner, did you guys have a moment to meet with Mr. Cecil in regards to this?
I did. I mean, I spoke to him. I called him up, and we talked about some of the changes that I made. It's very minor for what the purpose of the letter is. We agreed not to have the door hangers because people don't go to that front door, for one, and if you're going to go up and hang something on the door, you might as well knock on the door. So we came to agreement on that, and also the fact that they should contact the officer below. That was not in there before. I did see an email then from Rick, and he may have additional things he wants to add or comment on.
Yes, the only other thing that I mentioned, even though I did say to possibly add the ordinance violation, the ordinance number to the sheet. But Mr. Cecil said that he will automatically send a copy of the exact ordinance, so it will have the number on it, and it will give the full explanation then of the violation. And as Ms. Timber just said, talking about calling the officer, I just had a similar comment about calling the township for the regulations on the violation, which again, they can call that officer. So we're pretty much all on the same page. There was nothing major to change in that.
Okay. Any more comments or discussion on this item? I know we kind of went over it.
Yeah, the last thing probably is, as Nancy said, we decided the cost is cost prohibitive really to do door hangers. And again, how often are they going to go to the front doors? An 8.5 by 11 piece of paper with the violation on it will suffice for mailing.
Right.
Okay. Mr. Montry?
Are we mailing something, or are they dropping it in a mailbox?
If they are in violation, they will mail it to them along with the ordinance itself that clearly states what the violation is and any handwritten notes.
You can't drop it in their mailbox for one, that's against the law, but the,
If you use the newspaper when you can.
well, a lot of people don't get the newspaper anymore because it's all online. However,
So that's why.
the mail, they're going to go to the door first when they see the violation. And if they go to the door, they can hand them this at the door. But otherwise, in order to be sure that they get it, it'll have to be mailed.
That's cheaper than. That's a cheaper route.
No, I mean, it's 50 cents to mail it, but they may be able to just hand it to them in the door and talk to them there at the door. The whole point is that we're moving towards not waiting until some neighbor calls. We're trying to get beyond that, and the ordinance officers have the ability now to see and approach the homeowner without having a complaint.
And it also takes it off of the neighbor too, because a lot of neighbors don't want to call against their neighbor. So if it's seen by an ordinance officer and they approach it, then that person is not implicated, because they do, if somebody calls in a complaint, they do identify that person. And there have been people that have refused then to give their complaint because they fear to being identified.
To Craig's point, though, is what Craig's saying is cheaper to put the door hangers on, which it is. But what Nancy's saying is people might not get those. Because a lot of people don't go to the front door. So the mail being mailed to you, it's kind of a guarantee that, hey, you're going to get that letter at some point. Go ahead, Craig.
So I wanted to clarify, this is not something that, we talked about it at the last meeting, this is not something that's replacing or allowing anonymity for a call-in. This is strictly for the purposes of, while an ordinance officer is out on their route and something that they clearly see, this is not a replacement for, I have an issue that's not a big enough deal for me to put my name next to it. We mentioned the tall grass situation earlier. That's an actual issue, so nobody has a problem putting their name on it. But this isn't a replacement of that, so that I can just say, oh, cool, I'll just have them send a mailer because I don't want to put my name on this. That is correct?
That's correct. That is correct.
Any more comments, discussion?
I would comment that I feel like was only a few tweaks, but it's definitely worded better. There's definitely, like, the verbiage on this sheet is significant,
Look at Nancy
I think.
smiling.
You
Look at
can
Nancy
thank the English teacher. I'd like to move that we approve the Bedford Township courtesy notice for violation of a township ordinance that was submitted in the packet.
I'll second.
Okay, motion and supported by Mr. Steiner. Discussion. I just want to echo what Mr. Steiner said. We get multiple calls. I mean, at least one or two a week. Or I don't know. We get multiple calls where people, once they find out they have to give their information, they say never mind, because they don't want to deal with an angry neighbor or whatever. But as far as situations in people's backyards, chickens, blight in somebody's backyard, those are things that people are still going to have to call and complain on. These are just situations you see from the street. That boat that's been sitting in somebody's front yard for months that just looks bad for the whole neighborhood. That'll be able to be taken care of now. So, okay, Ms. Hirschberger, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Janusik?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Okay. Moving on to new business, 8A, vouchers for payment. Ms. Hirschberger?
Before I do that, can I ask when Jeff is going to speak?
We can move him up to now if you want.
Let's do that.
Okay. Okay. So Mr. Pauly was asked to be on, or Chief Deputy, right? Correct? Okay, you're muted, just so you know. Was asked to be on by our Board of Trustees. There was an increase in the cost per deputy. Mr. Clemens has been working with the county and myself, to get some clarifications. Mr. Steiner, to really get clarification on how this has come about, because we were kind of caught off guard with it. And it's a lot of money. It's roughly $250,000 per year. So we kind of wanted to know the background, how it got to this point, and so the board asked a representative to be on, and obviously the county has their meetings the same night we do. So if you and Mr. Goldsmith can shed some light on this and get some questions answered from our board, because this is a difficult situation for this board, where we're at financially, and where we're at with the state with the reduction in our state share revenue. $250,000 is a huge number. So if you want to go ahead and shed some light on the situation, and then we'll have some questions from the board, I'm sure.
Okay, yes. First of all, thank you for inviting me. I want to start by, I guess I want to offer an apology about the delay and the manner in how the board found out about the increases. At the end of the day, I think there was a mistake, a miscommunication, if you will. It probably lies at my feet. And for that, I apologize. Just a miscommunication between me and the finance department as to how were we going to give you a sample invoice. So I take full responsibility for that. As for the increase, I did put out an email to, I think, most of the board, and I outlined the rates. The biggest driver of this, as you can see, is the retiree health care. And that is based off of an actuary study. And I'm not going to pretend to be a numbers person because, quite frankly, it's sometimes it's difficult to understand. But in a nutshell, it was based off the actuary study, and the rate is currently for 2020 76% and some change. I don't have an answer as to how they arrived at that figure, but I can certainly try to answer any questions you may have.
Ms. Tinneberry?
As I read your email, my first question is retiree health care. We pay for 10 deputies. We don't pay for any retired deputies. So my question is, does our contract say that we are required to pay retiree health care?
Mr. Goldsmith,
Yeah.
go ahead.
Well, that's fine. I would probably refer this to Phil anyway.
Either one of you guys work it how you want. Go ahead.
I'll respond to that. The contract with the county requires us, the township, to pay on an 80-20 split. Benefits.
I can't hear Phil.
I'm having a hard time hearing you. I don't know if you could turn your volume up on your PC or,
I'm sorry. Can you hear me better now?
No.
I'm at volume here.
There you go. Now you're good.
okay, and everybody else could mute their buttons, please.
Okay, I'll start over. The contract between the County of Monroe and Bedford Township requires Bedford Township to pay 80%. It's an 80-20 cost sharing provision within the contract document. We pay 80% of the salary and the fringe benefits of the deputies that are assigned to our contract unit in Bedford Township. Nancy, you're correct. We're not paying for any retired deputies, but there's a contribution for retirement that is collectively bargained between the county, the sheriff, and the deputies and the command officers, their respective bargaining units. And so that contribution is part of the employee benefit that we're contractually obligated to pay. And again, that's 80%. So through an actuarial study and based on funds, et cetera, there was a huge increase in what the county has to pay as a benefit into the retiree healthcare benefit fund for all deputies. Again, that's pursuant to the collective bargaining agreement. And so our costs went way up for the 10 deputies that we have. So it's a collectively bargained benefit that we pay 80% of. And Chief Deputy Pauly, if you want to or can add to that, by all means do so.
Phil, I think you covered it perfectly. A lot better than I would have been able to.
Okay.
I'm gonna stay muted, so just go ahead, Ms. Tanner.
Okay. Well, I understand the contract. I understand the negotiated items for the deputies, but the term retiree health care, I see paying into a pension for the retirees. I mean, for the current deputies that will eventually retire. But I've never heard of, like we have retiree health care for Bedford Township for the retired people and elected officials. But we don't, we pay into that. We have this agreement that we pay them so much a year, and you know what the agreement is. So I don't understand why I'm sorry, I understand the negotiating the contract, but what is the actual part of their contract that says retiree health care?
I'll try to answer that. There's a line item, if you will, and it's different than in addition to pension, Nancy. So there's a pension contribution, and there's also a contribution into the retiree healthcare benefit trust fund that funds healthcare for retired deputies after retirements, just as pension has to be funded. Again, that based on an actuarial study, the county, and correct me if I'm wrong, Jeff, but I believe the county, based on that actuarial study and as a collectively bargained benefit, had to increase the contribution into the retiree healthcare fund for the just as we would a pension, to keep it healthy and properly funded for deputies when they eventually do retire. So again, it's a fringe benefit that all deputies receive, including those assigned to us.
Okay, so the company, I'm sorry, can I just finish my one question? No?
Yep.
So the company that they deal with, have they thought about going to a different company, or have they, I mean, it just doesn't seem right that somebody, whether it's the county or whoever, can dump $250,000 additional requirement into another person's budget when nobody knows what that budget is. I mean, you can't bankrupt someone just because these things have gone up 70%. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't sound kosher, I guess.
Mr. Steiner, something I'm gonna ask after him is our millage is gonna have to be increased now, but go ahead, Mr. Steiner.
So question I have, out of the 10 deputies that are in Bedford, are all 10 deputies being paid into that same fund, or only a portion of those deputies?
Paul, I can answer that. Right now, you have 11 deputies in effect assigned to the township, and that's due to your arrangement with the school. So out of those 11, 3, with one of those being the school deputy, are eligible for retiree health care. The remaining 8 currently, this year are we call them tier 2 employees that through the collective bargaining agreement, the tier 2 employees do not get retiree health care. Now that said, though, that's a revolving number. I mean, 2 months from now, we could have changeover and switch and tier 1 employees back into Bedford. Like for the last 4, 5, 6, 7 years, it's been heavily weighted as tier 1 deputies. So at any moment, that number can fluctuate is what I'm getting at. But right now, that's the figures.
Tier 1 deputies are deputies, for your understanding, that have more seniority. I forget what the date is, but after a certain date, the tier 2 deputies do not have retirement health care benefits, as Chief Deputy Pauly stated.
Increases over time, but just from last year to this year, it just seems like an astronomical number that is a 69.7% increase over 2019.
So what are we planning to do for the millage? I mean, even if whatever this board decides, we still have a millage that is supposed to cover 4 officers. So that millage that's in place right now does not have enough money to cover the cost of those officers. So something that we need to think about, Mr. Clements.
Yeah, I want to bounce away from the millage and come back if that's okay with you. Question to Phil. It's my understanding that the level 2 or unit 2 deputies are paying less into the retirement system. And so as deputies begin to age out, we're having a balance problem with the fund being actuarialized per the minimum mandatory. So in having conversations today, it would appear that this problem is not only a this year problem, but it could conceivably be a next year and a year after. Is that a correct assumption? Or is there reason to believe that this is the year of adjustment and we shouldn't see a radical adjustment? Because to Nancy's point, this isn't about the cost of administratively handling this fund. It's about the percentage of the fund being funded against the pool potentially pulling off of it, correct?
Yes, I think that's a good way to put it.
And so then am I correct that year 2, 3, 4 could also see increases because we have fewer users contributing, or not fewer users, less money being contributed into the pool of funds, but yet more deputies gaining age with each passing year?
I think that's an accurate statement. I would love to be corrected by Jeff if he feels he can, but I think that's probably, from an actuarial standpoint, a correct statement.
Well, the reason why I ask is because Mr. Basanic got back a revised number that with our contracted deputies in the 80-20, according to him, the total is $191,510.74. And it's still a huge number, but it's less by 60,000 than what we originally thought it to be. I think my big concern is not only what do we do this year, but this board needs to have a plan in place to address year 2, 3, and potentially however long this goes on. And we need some feedback as to how this looks. And the question I originally asked of Mr. Bosonic is, what is the formulation? How exactly were the numbers derived and then divided and then assigned to each local unit government contract and or the county as a whole? He kind of provided that information, but I still think it would be healthy for someone from the county finance department to probably have an in-depth meeting with this board, because there's still so many variables circling around that there's nothing to stop this from being the same number next year. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Ms. Tinneberry, you're muted.
Well, I have a couple questions. One, why are we paying for all top level, the 1 deputies? I mean, it seems to me like because Bedford is paying for a contract, we're getting the biggest, brunt of the cost. And my other question is, when I heard TC say that, or maybe Jeff, I'm not sure, in the negotiation, the level 2 deputies, do I understand that because they're level 2, they didn't negotiate the same rate as the level 1 deputies?
No, there's tier 1 and tier 2. The county several years ago created the tier 2 deputy level, and it applies to a lot of other county employees as well. And so as a cost saving for the long run, the county made the decision that it would no longer pay retiree health care benefits, that would be something that a retiree would have to take care of on their own. So the tier 2 deputies that have been hired on after that effective date did not receive that benefit. And those tier 2 deputies that are assigned to Bedford Township, we're not paying any retiree health care for them. We're only paying retiree health care for those tier 1 deputies assigned to the contract. They have more seniority, and we're paying 80% of their fringe benefits, which includes the retiree health care benefit, if that makes sense to you. So it wasn't a matter of negotiation. That was a conscious policy adopted by the County Board of Commissioners after a certain definitive date not to provide retiree health care benefits.
Okay, that does make sense. So to me, the answer to this is send us all, and Jeff, please don't take offense, but send us all tier 2 deputies. Why should we suffer the brunt of paying for all this increase? We'll just take tier 2 deputies. I'm sure they're just as capable as tier 1 deputies.
Go ahead, Mr. Foley.
Yeah, so I think it's important to understand though, in the contract, it calls for an 80-20 split. So each municipality, each local contract that we have, it's an average of all the compensation. That means all of the high earning wages to the lowest earning wage, including the fringes, both tier 1 and tier 2. And that's the figure that not only Bedford, but Frenchtown, Monroetown, that's the figure that they pay, that average compensation. And that's before the 80-20 split. And to speak a little bit, Nancy, about having tier 2, it's not quite that simple, because the contract calls for the townships to pay the mean of all the deputies. And like I said earlier tonight, there's so much movement in and out of the contract. It would almost be impossible to keep track of that. And I assume when this contract was created, that was taken into consideration.
Mr. Montry?
If I can unmute myself. Phil, how with the, I don't know that I've seen the physical contract or to be able to read through that or not. I'm under the understanding that there was some sort of clause or verbiage that says that we're supposed to get some sort of heads up or whatever. I guess with that in mind, are we contractually obligated to like hold to the contract if with the other end of the contract not being held together?
We're obligated to pay 80% of the salary and fringe benefits as described by Chief Deputy Polly. The note, whether we were notified 6 months ago or today, we're still contractually obligated to pay that. And Jeff described what transpired previously. So there's no out for us. It's a benefit that has to be paid, the mean benefit. And we'll get you the contract to review. That's certainly, it's a public record, and a lot of review went into that in the not too distant past, if you remember.
Ms. Tinnery, unless you're not finished with your question, Mr. Montry. You good? Okay, Ms. Tinnery.
So the schools have been out for months now. Why are we still paying for a deputy in the schools?
Mr. Paul, you can answer that. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah. Actually, you're not. The county's actually picked that up, and that goes for all the schools. So I think the date was March 12th-ish. That's when the schools stopped paying. So the county's picked that up. The deputy that was in there was one of the school officers, but he's still assigned out of Bedford. So he's still that deputy is still being provided to Bedford Township, working primarily Bedford Township calls almost exclusively.
And my other question is to Phil. I mean, I just can't imagine. You said we're contractually obligated. If we don't have the money, we don't have the money. So what are our options? Are they lay off some deputies? Can we do that by the contract? Or I'm not interested in raising the millage to our community who are suffering because of all of this COVID-19 business, and people are out of work, and we're talking about raising a millage. I'm not interested in raising a millage. And so what are our options? We just don't have the money.
There are numerous options. One is to reduce the number of deputies that are assigned to the Bedford contract, bring it into what Bedford is able to pay. Negotiate the contract, although I don't know how amenable county would be to that, given the fact all local units of government operate under virtually the same contract provisions. But no, if you can't pay, you can't pay. And if adjustments have to be made, including increasing the number of deputies assigned to Bedford, that's something that has to be explored and looked into.
Well, I think this board would agree that the last thing we want to do is lose officers. Moving forward with the potential of a 40% decrease in our state shared revenue, if that happens, we're in trouble. So if it doesn't, it's kind of a gamble at this point, of not knowing what that figure is going to be, what that decrease is going to be. So, it's a tough call. Chief Deputy Paul, do you have a question? Still your hands up. Anybody else have any comments or questions or anything, Ms. Hirschberger?
I have a comment. Go ahead, Trudy.
I just wanted to know, the county commissioners voted on this, correct?
Yes.
How long ago did they know this was happening?
Oh, voted on the actuarial increase. I don't know if that went to a vote of the county commissioners. That I don't know. Maybe Jeff does.
I can't speak with any certainty, but I guess it would be my impression that they approved it when they approved the budget. Maybe I'm just throwing that out there. Probably would have been at the back end of 19.
That's probably the likely event. The budget resolution probably approved the increase based upon the actuarial study. That's probably the likely way that it happened.
Okay.
Has the county discussed at all, using some of the rainy day funds to help out with the increase?
I don't know of any
A
discussion.
backup plan, if we have to cut officers in this discussion, that they're willing to offset the cost a little bit to help out?
I don't know of any discussion having occurred with respect to that, but my comment was going to be, and TC suggested this, I think it would be good for the board to appoint maybe one delegate to meet with Jeff, Chief Deputy Pauly, and Mike Basanik, and have a meeting to start discussion as to what the future looks like and what options we might have. And you could also talk to your county commissioner about that.
So, well, the issue is our budget is due. We're getting ready to approve our budget, by the end of the month, right? Trudy, we have to have it. So the second meeting, which is 2 weeks from now, we're approving our budget. So, TC and I wanted to meet with the Sonic and the crew sometime. I mean, we could try to get it on the agenda to decide how we want to go about it. I mean, this is a big decision to make. Like Ms. Tinberry said, do we increase the millage, put it on the taxpayers? Do we, put it on the general fund? Do we take 2 officers out? I don't know at this point. Like I said, I know this board's the last thing we want is to have less coverage in this community. But
If you have the time to devote to it, and I know you would make the time, and TC, I'm sure Mike Basanik would meet with you, and I'd like Jeff to be in that meeting too, because he adds a lot to the discussion, I believe, to just talk it through, see what the options might be. If anyone understands constructing a budget, it's Mike Basanik. He's been doing it for years for the county. And if anybody understands reductions in state revenue sharing, it's Mike Basanik, because the county is confronted with the same issue. So I think that would be a good discussion to have. You need to find all the facts that you can, support your decision with facts, and that would be a good place to continue what you've already started.
okay, Ms. Tinberry.
Well, let's face it, we have had to let go 3 of our very valued employees. And we're saying that that we don't want to, I mean, the coverage is the coverage, but I'm sorry, if that's what has to be, that's what has to be. Because we had to let go 3 of ours. So, I mean, if we're willing to do that for our coverage, we need to, it's not a nice, happy thing to do, but we have to consider it.
Well, that's certainly one of the options that would have to be considered. But before you make that decision, I'm just suggesting that to gather the facts, find out what all the options are, and then with those facts, you'll have to make a decision. And you're right; those are hard decisions to make.
Mr. Peroni?
Go ahead, Mr. Steiner. I gotta go fast.
So if Mr. Clements and Mr. Peroni are going to set up a meeting, I'd like to see them get a copy of that actuary study to see the real numbers and what really is the driver behind it. And then we need to have some better dialogue going forward. You know, if this was approved at the county budget level last year in 2019, they should have notified everyone last year that these numbers were going to take a drastic jump this year. So those are a couple things that we just can't, you know, who can take a $250,000 budget adjustment overnight? It's just unfathomable.
So, any more discussion? If not, we'll set up a meeting ASAP. Put it on the next agenda for next meeting prior to the approval of the budget, and we're going to have to make a very tough decision in a very short period of time. That's a tough thing for me, at least. I mean, you know. So, Chief Deputy Pauly, we appreciate you being on with us. I know you've got a scoot, so he's going to get off the meeting. If anybody has any more questions for him, ask him now, because he's going to, I believe, get off the meeting. Nope. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for being here.
Yep, have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
Okay, so Ms. Hirschberger, vouchers for payment.
I'd like to make a motion that the following vouchers be approved for payment. General fund in the amount of $42,975.94. Fire district, $22,936.84. Police fund, $2,808.92. Park fund, $244.32. Library fund, $4,939.92. Downtown Development Authority, $308,510.30. Sewer O&M fund, $138.01. Trust Agency fund, $38,288.11. For a grand total of $420,842.36.
Well, Paul's not here, and I'm sure Krista is going to have to learn that that's your job, Krista, to say. You move to second that.
I move to second that.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Jandisek?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, motion passed 7-0. Item 8B, approval of the Michigan Townships Association dues for July 1, 2020 to June 30, 2021. You have the bill in front of you. It's in the amount of $6,974.17. I know this is something probably everybody on this board uses, at least I do on a pretty regular basis. It saves us, I think it saves us this amount in legal fees easily a year. Sorry, Phil, but it comes in handy for sure. Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, the actual dues is $6,771.04. The additional $203.13 is for their legal fund. Last year, we did not approve the additional for the legal fund. And so are we just going to approve the dues, or are we going to discuss the other premium pass and all of that?
I think we agreed last year that we're not going to pay it, so unless anybody has any argument to pay it, we'll move forward.
Well, that's the dues. But my point is, on their invoice, they also talk about classes that they offer. They've moved towards, even though we're members, we have to pay for classes. And this invoice also provides additional premium pass for all classes for the MTA included for all of our employees and board. So I didn't know if we were interested in taking that. I don't know how much the employees, I know we're gonna have several new trustees and a new treasurer. I mean, Krista's not new, but she may want to take some classes that the MT offers for treasurers. So I don't know how widely it's used in the office, but we will have new board members that, I don't know if that 1,900 is a deal or if it's more than what we would normally pay. Maybe Trudy would be able to shed light on that.
It would be a deal if if classes were taken, but if no one's gonna take the classes, then, I mean, it depends on how many classes are taken. You could
Right,
take under this
yeah.
amount, you could take over this amount. It just depends.
Well, we could just, the board could encourage people to take those. I know Krista's new deputy will, I'm sure, want to participate in some of those, but I mean, it's up to the board. I'm just saying that the dues, strictly the dues, are $6,771.04. But if we wanted to add that premium pass for another 1,900, that would be something we'd want to include in this motion.
And if you look on the other page, it says that the 1,900 is actually valued at over 4,000.
I saw that, but like you said, it depends on how many people actually use it.
I had pulled the conference out of my budget, so I wasn't planning on attending next year due to budget. I'm not sure. I mean, we're gonna have a lot of new people.
Okay, this isn't about the conference. You still have to pay if you want to go to the MTA conference, if they have it. They didn't have it this year. It got canceled because of the coronavirus. This is just taking separate courses. Like it says, I thought it gave some examples, but the Planning Commission, here it is on the very back page. It says elections, tips and fundamentals, cemetery management, new official training, treasurer's guide to tax collecting. They offer many classes throughout the year, and these classes are not what you would take at the conference. They're additional separate classes.
Are those classes offered remotely that would make it easier for the people to participate, or do you have to travel to the site?
It
You're
does
talking
say
to an
some
old
online.
woman. I don't know.
There's a lot of them that are webinars.
It does say online in the documents, and as Trudy said, that valuation of the $4,000, that's as if just one person attended. So, I mean, that goes a long way. Like you said, if you've got multiple potential for new people, even a couple courses on a couple of those new board members pretty much pay that difference.
Mr. Montre?
Yeah, I was interested in hearing other board members' opinions. I know that I've got on there before to looked at some different classes or whatever, like webinars that seemed interesting. And I assumed that was going to be included with our membership. And then you go and it's they're expensive to just take them, whatever. It's and I know personally I shied away from taking them, something that I was interested in taking. And I was like, I'm not dropping $300 to take a half-hour webinar on something like that. I didn't feel like the value was there. So I was interested if other board members, what other people's thoughts were.
Ms. Tanneberry?
Well, back in my day, they were offered with the membership, but things have changed and prices have gone up, and they pay their instructors now, where it used to be just people from the MTA, employees. They're excellent courses. I have never been to one bad MTA course. They have excellent instructors, but now they have to pay them, and so they charge extra. I would suggest that the board include the $1,900 for all the classes, and then encourage constantly encourage new employees and new board members to attend.
Is that a motion?
Yes, that is a motion. I would like to move that we pay the $6,771.04 from July 1st, 2020 to June 30th, 2021 for our annual dues to the Michigan Townships Association, and also include the premium pass, all courses included, for $1,900.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, motion is supportive of Mr. Steiner. Discussion?
Yeah, it's just one quick comment, and strongly encourage, especially the online, that saves any kind of money if somebody would have to travel normally to conferences. So really push the online portion of it too.
Yeah, and that's going to take these board, the board members to kind of push their people and say, hey, this course is coming up. I want you to take it, type deal. I know there's been courses for our maintenance department to learn about swing sets, the management and maintenance of them and stuff. So I think if it's utilized, it could be really good. Okay, could you call the roll, please?
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Janzasek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, and the motion passed 7-0. Okay, moving on to 8C, renewal of Delta Dental contract for Bedford Township from July 1, 2020 through June 30, 2021. Ms. Hirschberger?
We need to sign this and approve it to go forward with our Delta Dental. The price did not change. It's the same amount as it was last year.
Is that your motion?
That's my motion, to approve it as presented.
Support.
Okay, motion is supportive of Ms. Tinneberry. Discussion?
I
Seeing none?
appreciate that it's not $250,000 more this year.
Not even a penny.
Would you call the roll, please?
Hirschberger votes aye. Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Ms. Janzasek?
Aye.
Mr. Montroy?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Okay, item 8E, financing of the renovations, repairs to Fire Station 1.
8D, Mr. Supervisor.
Oh, I'm sorry, 8D, approval of a salary and benefit package for the deputy treasurer. Sorry about that. Ms. Janazek?
I'm requesting that my deputy, Nicole Knapp, be paid the current deputy salary. She has been employed with the township for over 1.5 years in the treasurer's department. She was a seasonal employee, but she knows the day in and day out processes of handling payments and doing the transactions and stuff that need to be done in the department. And she is learning the things that a deputy would need to do. I will be teaching her that, I should say. She is only going to need the benefit package for just herself, as her family is taken care of by her husband and his employer.
Okay,
If you have any
comments, board members? Ms. Tinneberry?
Too many misses here for you now, Paul. So you're saying that the current salary that you have, but it would not get an increase July 1st
Correct.
with the new budget? Okay.
Correct.
And then my other question is, currently we pay stipends for other, when the family has other insurance. Is she willing to waive that?
That's
Her
been going on
actually-
our past boards, Ms. Tinneberry.
Yeah, and her husband,
We removed that, the stipend.
Oh, we moved it from what?
For many future people getting a stipend.
In a policy, or you just because is it recorded somewhere? I don't remember that.
I believe it's recorded. I remember it. I'd have to go back and see when that happened, but we did remove all future stipends.
Okay, if you remember it, Trudy, if you remember it, I'm good with it.
Well, I remember because I just said it. Well, I get some credit. No, I'm just kidding. No, I know we kept it in place for a couple that were grandfathered.
Okay.
Yeah, and I do know that her husband's employer requires her, if her current job offers health benefits, that she has to take them for herself.
Well, shoot, tell her employer that we require the same daggum thing.
No, I don't mind paying her health care benefits. I'm not in favor of the stipend, so I'm good with that.
Okay.
Mr. Steiner?
Yeah, and I think the stipend also referred to someone that was completely declining the insurance, not just a portion of their family as well. The one thing I do want to also bring up is I know that when we brought the new deputy into the supervisor's department, we started at a lower salary than what was current. I've reviewed the resume from Ms. Knapp, and I'm thinking we should be looking at something similar to what we had in the deputies department. I know she's had a year and a half of part-time experience within the township in the department. I know that when Mr. Pryor came on, he did not have direct township experience, but he had numerous years of business experience and banking, et cetera. So I'm just throwing it out there. I think that $50,000, $12.48 might be a little high on the high end until somebody's officially fully knowledgeable of the department.
Ms. Tineberry?
So do you have a figure, Rick, that you're suggesting, and a time limit? How long?
Well, I've got a couple thoughts in mind, but I'd like to hear from other folks. But again, I was looking in the 40, 42 range and thinking 6 months.
Mr. Clements?
I won't repeat what Rick said because I agree with it. I was the one who I think encouraged the board to bring in Al at slightly less pay. And I will point out to the board that that was the beginning of what would be a 4-year stint as a deputy. Absolutely no disrespect intended, and it's not a reflection of how I'm going to vote or how I think the vote should go. But the reality of it is this is an interim appointment until the vote is decided. And that also should pay some impact on this, because there is at least some potential that this could be no more than a 60-day hire. And that also being the case, we then potentially lose the training and all of what's gone into the employee. So I agree with Rick. I was thinking more in the 45 to 46 range.
I could go with the 45 range, Mr. Clements.
Ms. Tineberry?
What do the other, let's say Angie and Cindy or Amy, what is their, I wouldn't like to see her below the other employees. What are their package?
Krista, do you have the budget in front of you?
I could tell you just off the top of my head, it's not that high, Nancy. Those people don't make
What's
that much.
that?
They don't make
What?
that much money.
What much? Give me a number.
They don't make over 45.
She's gonna look at
She's gonna look it up,
Angie's.
but I'm pretty sure they don't.
Administrative is for 2019-20, it's 40,716. For 19-20.
And that's for
That's the administrative assistant.
administrative assistant.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And also, just to finish up my thought, that, if in fact the vote affirms both the current treasurer and what's going to be her deputy, I would not be opposed to her being moved to that pay at that time.
Okay.
What pay?
The
You gotta pick
requested
a number. The 50,000?
$50,012.48, because at that point in time, she would become the deputy treasurer for what would be a 4-year stint.
Okay, gotcha. Yep, I agree.
So Mr. Clemens, since technically whoever fills that role won't technically assume that responsibility until November, middle of November. So
Sure.
Are you talking about after the primary, or are you talking about after the general?
I don't have a huge feeling one way on it. What I was looking for is for this board to be able to have clarification as to what the projected long-term looks like.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Well, you're not elected in August. It doesn't matter if you don't have any opposition. You're not elected. Independents can jump in there, write in. So it would have to be after November 20th.
Mm-hmm.
I guess if Krista's elected, Nicole can start spending up to 50,000, but in November is when she would get the raise. That was a joke.
Nobody laughed, Nancy.
I know. Even Bob.
What's the pleasure of the board?
All right, Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion that the
Craig's-
board,
Craig's hand up.
We can get a motion and then have discussion. Go ahead. Mr.
Okay.
Clemens.
I make a motion that this board approve the recommendation of Nicole Knapp to be the deputy treasurer effective June 1, 2020, with an initial starting wage of $45,000 to be bumped to $50,012.48 upon conclusion of the election and appointment, whatever the first meeting would be, November 20-ish.
Okay.
I'll second.
Okay, motion in support of Mr. Steiner. Discussion, Ms. Tinneberry.
Can I make a friendly amendment that the motion include benefits,
Yes.
not just salary, that 45,000 plus benefits?
Absolutely, and also, Trudy, if you'd be sure it's not November 20-ish, but if you put in the correct date, I'd appreciate it.
It would be after the 21st. 20th, 21st is when it switches, so it would be after that.
Okay, thank you.
Good with that. Accept the friendly amendment.
Any more discussion? Seeing none, could you call the roll, please?
Mr. Clemens?
Aye.
Mr. Steiner?
Aye.
Ms. Tinneberry?
Aye.
Mr. Montry?
Aye.
Ms. Janzisek?
Aye.
Hirschberger votes aye. Mr. Peroni?
Aye, the motion passed 7-0. Okay. 8D, financing of the renovations or repairs to Fire Station 1. I think the board's gotten the information that we paid out we took a CD from one of the restricted funds, paid for a portion of I think the down payment on the fire hall or a bill that was due, but we have to repay that. So the correct amounts, right around $750,000. So there's been a lot of discussions from the board on how we want to fund that. Refinance it. And Ms. Januzak, do you have an updated cost on financing? Is it the same? I think Mr. Francis had us with the First Merchants at 3.5%, correct?
Yes, I did talk to the bank today, and he did say that it would be the 3.5%. If we would have to do the 700,000 because with repaying, even though we made that first payment, we have to repay the 150 back into that restricted fund. So we would need to take out the loan for the 700,000. I did also ask him, because I know it did come up at one of the earlier board meetings, about the collateral. And Mr. Slate said that the collateral would be the building. So,
So the board's also aware that we had some conversations going on in the past couple weeks, total cash on hand. And everybody's aware we have roughly 1.85 million cash on hand. Okay, we do have money in CDs, but those are restricted funds that can't be used for buildings, etc. The question is, and I've said it myself, let's pay for this building cash. Okay, that was when I thought we had 2.6 million. Okay, 1.85 million, if we take 700,000 out of it, now we're at 1.1 roughly and some change. And we have the risk this fall of having the state share revenue. And that's the same gamble we have with the sheriff's office, with the cost increase there. We have some unknowns coming. We don't know exactly what this decrease is going to be. So we've been saying, hey, we need to shoot for the 40%, the worst. And if it's changes in the fall, then it's different. So, yeah, I don't know. At this point, if we had 2.5 in the bank, I think it'd be a no-brainer for us to pay cash for it. Mr. Steiner?
I don't want to get too far off track. I know we're talking about the fire station. I do know that I mentioned to Ms. Jensek that would there be a possibility of investigating what the balance is on the township hall and to potentially see if that is worth a refinance, if we could even do that. I don't know, Ms. Jensek, I don't know if you had a chance to ask that question when you talked to the bank, or is that something we need to talk later?
I did mention it to him, but he was not involved in that transaction.
Okay.
He did say that he could look into it for us further if we needed him to or wanted him to.
Oh, it won't
That's
cost
at
us anything.
4.5% though, Mr. Steiner. So, I mean, we should look at refinancing that anyways, if it's at
Well,
4.5%. Possibility.
That was my comment. That's why I asked to look
Finance
into.
and lump them together. Okay, I'm sorry.
Well, you just have to have two separate because you're not going to bundle them.
No.
Mr. Montry?
I thought we got the answer. I thought I have written down, and I don't remember where I got that from, but I thought we had 815 left on the building, scheduled to be done in, what was it, 26?
26.
Right? Yeah, that's what I thought. I don't remember who sent that, but I thought that we did, it was 815 left on that building.
Are you saying 815,000 left on the building? What? I guess I'm missing what you're saying.
On Township Hall, I thought you were asking how much do we still owe?
I thought you were talking about the fire.
I think it was 8.25.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's around there, Craig. Somewhere between 815, 825. What we saw.
Either way, we should look at refinancing that.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's a good thought.
Mr. Supervisor, if I could make a suggestion, before you make a decision to borrow money and pledge collateral, pledge a township property as collateral, I think maybe you and I should, or someone from the board should have a brief telephone conference with our bond attorney, Pat McGow, just to make sure that what has been proposed by the bank comports with Michigan law in terms of borrowing, financing, and pledging of collateral.
I can do that with you, Phil.
Okay, I'd be happy to do it. I think we should, and report back to the board.
Thanks, Phil. That was absolutely a good suggestion.
Okay. Okay, but Ms. Tinderberry, sorry.
Well, my question is, got carried away here with, what is it? Is the 750,000 due in one payment all at once? I mean, when is our payment due and what's the,
There's a
usually,
payment,
go ahead, I'm sorry.
there's a payment due right now of 137,000 that I'm not sure how to make. That's actually two draws, the second and the third draw that they're asking for.
So Trudy, how far would that get us to where we know when our final payment's due, would that get us any closer to where we could find out where the state share revenue is gonna be?
No, they're gonna want it when they're done, and I think they're gonna be done by this month.
This month? Okay, I just wasn't sure where they were at.
Yeah, that's why we don't have too much time to do anything. We need to make a decision because they're gonna want a final draw this month when they conclude.
Yeah, Ms. Tennever?
But we should be getting this month our state shared revenue check. So we should know if it's up or if it's down, or, I mean, certainly they give you 30 days after
You're fine.
we'd have another meeting or two before that payment comes due, is what I'm saying. And we would be getting a check from the state this month. We should.
Well, why don't we pay the first payment, the 130-some thousand out of our general fund? We can take on that payment, and then that would buy us some more time to where we get that check. Or does that give us any inclination of where we're gonna be at with the reduction? I know it was gonna be reduced this fiscal year or something, a couple $100,000, but I'm not sure. That doesn't really tell us what August is going to look like, right?
Correct. August is when they're reevaluating.
Krista, what is the interest, total interest that we'd be paying a year on this loan?
That he did not give me.
I know
I
at
can
some point
call-
we had, when I thought it was,
It'd be 24 grand, 25
Paul, I
grand.
would say Paul Francis calculated out, he printed out an amortization schedule on his own, but I can call the bank first thing tomorrow morning and get a figure, and I can email it out to the board if you want me to.
well, I want to say it was 12,000 in interest a year, something like that, I thought.
Mm.
I mean, something we can do is we can always take the loan and pay it off early in 6 months.
Right.
If the reduction's not as bad, or we take our fund down to that million mark. So,
Because there is no prepayment penalty, so we don't.
Ms. Tennever?
There's no prepayment penalty, but whenever we've taken out a loan for our house, there's a huge payment to get the loan.
Closing costs, right?
Closing costs.
Right.
So, I mean, I would want to know what that is too.
He did say, Mr. Seitz did say that their title work expenses would be $5,000 or less for the township.
Okay, so that's 17,000, adding in the 12,000. I just don't think we need to make a decision at this meeting. We have the meeting on the 16th before any payment would come due.
Is there an appraisal or anything that we have to pay for?
He didn't say, I'm assuming that there would be.
Okay.
Because he did say that they would have to do an outside review, lien search and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
On the property.
I'm not sure how much that costs. Mr. Steiner?
I just did a quick amortization, 700,000 at 3.5% over a 10-year term. That is total over 10 years, $130,641 in interest. So basically 13,000 a year.
So even if we did take the loan right now and we decided to pay it off the first year, we're gonna have spent roughly $20,000.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of money. Rick, Mr. Steiner, do you have another question or
No, I can drop my hand now.
anybody else have any thoughts? I mean, do we want to try to delay it and pay one payment out of the general fund and then take a little bit less of a loan? Or maybe we could talk to Dalventhal, the company, and maybe they're willing to hold off till August. That's a conversation I can have with them till we find out where we're at with our state shared revenue. Ms. Tennever?
Well, I don't think we should make any decision tonight because Phil and Trudy are going to talk to the
Bond attorney.
bond attorney, and I think they can have an answer back by the 16th, our next board meeting.
Okay, Trudy, when's the 135,000 due?
Now,
So I mean, we can't really just say we can delay their payment for 2 more weeks without talking to them.
we'd have to ask and see, I mean, is there a penalty clause in that for interest? I mean, I would say we talk to them.
Yeah. 'Cause I'm not showing anything. Nope,
I didn't see anything.
I didn't see anything either.
Because usually a lot of times, you know, things will say either, you know, net 10, net 30, net 60, whatever.
I don't see it on
I
here.
don't have it in front of me, so I can't look.
As a courtesy though, I think we should give them a call and let them know where we're at.
Mhm.
Paul, could you do that? Could you talk to him and? just
Yeah,
see-
I could give him a call tomorrow.
Okay.
Or I could call him right now and put him on the spot. In front of the whole board. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I see Adam's name. Is Adam on? Is Adam in this board meeting for comment? I mean, no? I see his name there.
I don't think so.
Oh.
Okay, all right, well, let's move on then. We'll make a phone call tomorrow. I'm sure they'd be willing to lax a couple of weeks without penalties and stuff, so I'll shoot an email out to the board tomorrow. Okay, moving on to comments from the public. Comments limited to 5 minutes for each individual. So Krista, are you gonna find out some stronger figures on appraisals and stuff like that, so we can have
Yes.
a better fit? Okay. Perfect.
Yep, I'll call him tomorrow and get that information.
So let's move on to commissioner or board members' comments. Ms. Tinneberry? You're muted.
Nancy.
You're muted, Ms. Tinneberry.
Bob said that's when I sound the best. My question is, when are we going to open the township hall since the governor has lifted her stay home, stay safe thing? And I mean, I'm thinking we should be able to open it at least this next week because people are anxious to get in and see their elected officials at work.
Judy, did you want to speak to it, or would you like me to?
Nope. Was this
You're
bad
muted.
mother thing?
You can.
Okay, so here's the thing, we have to have a plan in place for reopening. We can't just open. We have to have protocols in place. A lot of decisions have to be made. Do we want to wear a mask? You know, the markings on the floor, 6 feet. You know, there's some, so there's some things that we have to, protocols put in place. Can we get the sanitizers that we need? I know Ms. Hirschberger's had a hard time getting some of the sanitizers that we need for after people are done using the counters. I was making some phone calls today to other communities to see what they're doing. I know some are going to be holding off a little bit and doing appointment only. So it's just it's up to the board of, you know, when we can open up. Did I hit everything we talked about earlier? Trudy?
I think so. Mainly, we need some kind of a protocol before we can open.
Ms. Tinner?
Well, I say you or a trustee sitting in, or you have the rest of the week, 3 days of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. You've had 2 months. If you thought that this was gonna last forever, the public want to get out. The public want to be able to come into their building. This is their building. So, I mean, you've had all this time, and now we're saying in the heat of the moment that you got to take time to set up protocols. I'm sorry, but I think that sounds to me like the planning should have been going on a long time ago. I don't see how it's that difficult. The governor has given certain protocols. She says you should wear a mask. You should only let so many in at a time. All you have to do is post that outside on the door of the building, and then be prepared for telling people this is what you do. I mean, I don't understand why it should take so long. You got 3 days left in this week, so if we open next Monday, there should be plenty of time.
Keep in mind, we're only in stage 4. I know she's lifted, and I understand, we can, do some things, but we just, I'm not saying we can't open, but we can't just willy-nilly just open. We have to make sure. I know Trudy was looking for the, sanitizing stuff. Trudy, can you get the stuff that we need?
Not yet. Still on back order.
So
There's other ways to sanitize. You got Clorox, you got spray. I'm hearing that you're finding ways to not open rather than ways to open.
We won't open. We just want to make sure we're doing it right.
Well,
So what's the board want to
governor
do?
said you could.
Well, she said for offices that if you could still work at home, work at home. Now, I'm not using that as an excuse, but I think we need protocols in place before we just open up.
Well, how long is it going
And
to
as
take
far
you
as-
to get protocols?
I don't know. I'm assuming Adam could help us with that. But as far as other sanitizers and stuff, we can't use bleach.
And
There's
keep
too
in
many
mind,
people are allergic, including myself, to bleach, so that's out. Nothing with bleach.
and keep in mind, our governor willy-nilly just said, hey, we're open. It wasn't, we thought it was going to be June 12th, and I'm glad it's early. I'm glad things got lifted. I'm thankful for our businesses in our community because it was time. But, it was kind of out of the blue. Does anybody else have any thoughts?
Mr. Proney and Trudy and Krista, because you will be there the full time. Couple things though in the protocols we need to think about is restrooms. You're probably going to have to put yellow tape up and block off that hallway that goes down toward those restrooms, except for employees. Then you're going to have a protocol about employees, making sure it's wiped down or sprayed down, if whatever solutions we have, things like that. The elevator would be off limits. If we hold a public meeting, I know Mr. Goldsmith said that if Township Hall's open, that the public has to be allowed in. I'm not 100% sure, and I'm not meaning to question Phil. I just wonder, though, if public has full access to a meeting through the same means we do today, if that's a necessity. If we did, and if we had the elevator, I would suggest that, say, elevator going up, stairs coming down only, with the exception of if someone is impaired or feels they cannot take the stairway up or down. So that would be a good protocol to look at, because a lot of places are doing, you go in one door and out of a different door, and that's why I'm mentioning that. So those are some of the things I mentioned before. Markings on the floors. Ms. Hertzberger talked about some of the plexiglass, up on the counters. You don't have to go across the whole counter. I saw some pretty simple plexiglass that had just a couple slots in the bottom and a vertical T that slid right in. I saw them at the auto repair. I saw them at a fast food restaurant. They're not real big. They can't be too expensive. I know Trudy's talking about getting them anyway. So those are just a few of the things that need to be done. And as pointed out a few minutes ago, and I think a lot of us said before, I think Chief Massengill is probably one of the best resources. He's probably most up on this whole COVID-19 and some of the restrictions and protocols to begin with.
Craig, you're shaking your head. What's your thoughts?
Just open it up.
Amen.
Well,
Hey.
I'm sorry, folks. I'm gonna say I have to disagree. I would love to say just open township hall too, but you also have to remember, there's a lot of entities out there that are already looking at their liabilities. If somebody comes on their property and is determined they caught COVID-19 at their location. So you've got to be very careful what we're doing. Again, I would love to open and just say, forget it. Everybody would love to get back to their normal life.
And just so the board knows, we planned on, Trudy and I, after discussion, to have it on for the next meeting with a plan in place. Like I said, her opening up, when was that? Yesterday or the day before, for June 8th, it caught us off guard too. Our agenda was already put together. So we weren't really prepared to come with a plan of, how we were going to go about it. And it's a moving target. It's changing constantly. So it's not like we could have a plan in place 2 months ago and be prepared for today,
Well, it's always been moved out, and this time she pulled it up.
So. Well, I mean, we'll continue to work on it. I mean, like I said, if the board.
What are you trying to avoid?
You have to have a protocol. You have to protect
Okay,
yourself from liability. If you called your insurance carrier and said, we're going to open without a protocol, they would strongly object. So we have to get a protocol in place before we open. That's just a legal requirement.
Chief just sent a text saying we can update the protocol based on the newest order ASAP.
Thank you, Chief.
So, I mean, we can meet with them tomorrow, go over it. If the board wants to give the 3 full-time elected officials approval to open up before the next meeting, if we have protocols in place, we can do that, or we can put it on the next agenda and have it be a plan. It's up to the board.
I mean, I'm fine if we have good, solid protocols in place. But that's the whole kicker, and Mr. Goldsmith just, verified that. If you don't have it in place, there's a legal liability there.
I'm not saying we shouldn't have protocols. I'm not saying that we shouldn't have a whole plan put together, but we're dragging our feet. We had plenty of time to do it. You could have revised it as the time changes, but now at the last minute, we're coming up with a plan. It just doesn't make sense to me. We've even talked about putting down stripes. We've talked about the plexiglass. We've talked about a lot of this. And I'm here in the township, and the plexiglass is up here. So it's not about, if we're going to and whether we can get it. It's
Chief Masterfield's got his hand up. Go ahead, Chief.
Good evening. So we've been updating the protocols that the township has in place. Each time there's a new executive order and trying to keep up with them. But right now they're specific only to our employees that are coming in and out and screening them and following the protocol because the public hasn't been given access right now. So if you're going to open it up to the public or open up certain areas to the public, I think to go back through and update that protocol book is something that you might want to look at this week so that it incorporates what we're already doing plus how you want to handle having public in either parts of the building or throughout the building. The challenge is going to be to meet all the requirements that the executive orders have, because when we start letting the public in, the biggest challenge that I think Clerk Hirschberger mentioned was even for us and decontaminating our ambulances, we're having a difficult time getting the supplies. We've got back orders all the way back from March. So even with the protocols in place, we have to make sure that we have the ability to follow through with what we put in writing. We can't just write a protocol and then not be able to follow it because we don't have the resources that are necessary to do it. So
Just so you guys know, we talked to Traverse City today. It's one of the townships we talked to. And as you all know, they're fully open, and Traverse City's township is still not open to the public. Like I said, I'll say it again, I'm not saying we shouldn't open. I just want to make sure whatever we do people feel comfortable coming into our building, because if we don't have stuff in place, people will come in there and get upset, you know, so.
Mr. Supervisor, it would be my suggestion that a protocol be developed, and as Chief Massengill indicated, that we have the present ability to fulfill that protocol with specific sanitizers, et cetera. When you develop that protocol, and I'm sure the chief will do this and is in the system with it, it's going to require further development because now you have to protect your employees and you're introducing the public into that mix. So the worst thing you can do is develop a protocol and then not follow it. That's a recipe for a disaster liability-wise. From a risk management perspective, you should develop it, you should put it in place, and you should practice it every day that you're open, every hour of every day, every minute of every day that you're open. It would further be my recommendation that the full board approve that protocol because there are certain governmental immunity protections that come with that. So that's my recommendation, to get it in place so you can get up and running and comply with the law and protect the township from liability.
You're muted.
Is this something the board's okay with myself and Trudy working with Chief on, or does anybody else want to join us? You can have Krista, if you want to do. I mean, does we want a trustee in there? I'd be okay to back out if we want to have.
I'd love to do it, but
I'm a trustee.
I'd
Nancy,
love
do
to
you
do
want
it
to
in
work
back
with him?
schedule.
We don't want Craig with him because he'll throw the protocol in the garbage. Nobody? Okay, then the three
You're
full-time will
muted,
work together.
Phil. Phil's trying to say something.
You muted.
Did you hear what I had to say prior? About the township board approving the protocol?
Yes,
Correct.
we did.
We're gonna have to put the protocol together, then put it on the agenda for the next agenda.
Yeah,
I agree with that.
sorry. I thought, when Craig said you're muted, I thought, gee, I said all that and I was muted.
No, yeah, we heard all that. They couldn't hear me talking a little bit.
All was muted.
So in that nobody's going to argue with legal, and probably rightfully so, I would suggest the 3 full-timers come up with a policy and aim to have it on the next meeting so we can vote and be ready to move forward.
I don't see that being a problem at all.
Thank you for the work.
Okay, moving on then to comments from township, or wait a minute.
That was
Actually, in the
Nancy's
middle of
comment.
them.
We're on Ms. Tennery's turn. I'm sorry. Mr. Clemens.
I have nothing.
Okay, Mr. Steiner. You're muted.
I'm good for now. Thank you.
Mr. Montry?
Well, that brings us to my question, which was, when are we going back to regular meetings? Or do we have to have a protocol to go to a meeting?
I would think it'll be the same thing. You know, I think we'll be able to have a good plan in place for next meeting with a protocol in place of how we're going to deal with the public. And I'm sure within that protocol, we'll probably have the way we're going to have the room set up.
I would suggest that. And then, so like if that's the pleasure of the board and nobody wants to go back to regular meetings without going through that whole process, then I would put that on the last piece, that whoever's getting together and figuring that out, that meetings are figured out as well. I wanted to follow up on my email about mosquito dunks. If anyone has an answer for that, I would appreciate that. I don't know what's going on, and I don't know if it even matters anymore. If we provided that to the township residents at all, or not at this point. We're in June. I don't even know if it matters anymore. And then lastly, I'd like to state that the rights of an American citizen are not derived from a governor. That's all.
Okay,
I want to hear the answer about the dunks.
I can say that to do the dunks, we would need driver's license. It's a list we keep, so we only have a few left. So we've been advising people that until we get to the point where we're able to do that again, that they could purchase other things from like the hardware store.
Craig, are you good with that?
So we don't have them?
We have some, but we do it by, we have to look at the driver's license to make sure they're a Bedford resident. And then we keep a schedule because you can only get so many every month. And we have to make sure we have people that'll just keep coming and getting them more and more and more. And then we don't have enough for everyone else.
Well, I guess so what if someone went one time and asked for them and was told that they don't have them?
I don't know of anyone that was told they don't have them. They were asked I was asked at one time if we were doing them, and I said not at this time. When we open, we would probably be able to do them again.
Mr. Clements, you had a comment or question?
Yes, I was so deep in thought on the other conversation. I neglected to mention that the parks are back open. And wanted to let everyone know that the fencing has come down and parks are back open.
Thank you for your comment. Okay. Mr. Montreux, are you done? Ms. Januzak?
I just want to thank everyone for approving Nikki's salary and benefit package and for kind of going easy on me this meeting. It wasn't as bad as I thought it was.
You only get one freebie, Krista.
Okay. We will be printing tax bills starting next week to get things rolling with the tax collection. The taxes will be going out July 1st. So that's all I have.
Mr. Springer?
Are you going to talk about the hazardous day, Paul?
Yeah, I can, or you can.
Okay.
It's been canceled at this point in time. So,
I just wanted to make sure that somebody mentioned it. I just had it on my list. The township update will be in the paper next week, so please look for that. Permanent absentee ballot applications did go out. If you did not receive one and you would like to have one, please give my office a call. Those who have received them, I'm getting a lot of calls on the signature. It hasn't changed, but for some reason, it's not remembered that you have to sign it in 2 locations. There's a signature in the middle and then a second signature at the bottom, and please sign in both locations. And lastly, I just want to welcome Krista to the board.
thank you. Welcome to the board, Krista.
Thank you.
Well, I just want to say that I'm proud of our sheriff's department, their professionalism that they have. I can honestly say I know that things that have happened that we've been watching on the television won't happen here in Bedford. We have some of the most qualified people, so I just want to let everybody know that there is a protest coming to Bedford tomorrow. It's an organized one. The sheriff's department is working with the leaders of that. It should be hopefully a clean one, and so just keep that in mind. That'll be from 6 to 9 at the Secor and Stearns area. I think they're starting on the side street over there by American Table. So I just want to say budget cuts have been very difficult for this board, I know. And I know but somebody mentioned tonight that 3 of our employees have gone. It's actually more. It's actually 5 and possibly 6 that have gone, that are going to be going total. So we've done a lot of tough things the last few months, but we have to do what we have to do to make ends meet here. As far as the township hall opening, I agree with Mr. Goldsmith. Whatever we do, we don't represent ourselves here. We represent the public, and we have to do what's in the best interest of them. If this was our business and we were all business owners, we could open up tomorrow and probably do what we wanted, but it's not the case here. I want to say with the parks opening, I'm excited the park board made that decision. It's not a decision that this board has made. I know some board members, including myself, have taken a lot of grief over the past couple months for closing them. So that's something that the park board does. So that's all I have at this time. If anybody has any further comments or questions.
There's a call waiting.
Go ahead. Go ahead, pass the call through. Good evening. Go ahead and state your name and address.
Hi, this is Jody Russ calling 1273 Winding Way, and I'm calling tonight on behalf of the Bedford. Did you guys hear me?
Nope, we're losing you.
Okay, is that any better?
Yep, that's better. Go ahead.
Okay, hi, this is Jody Russ. I live at 1273 Winding Way, and I'm calling on behalf of the Bedford Library tonight. I wanted to make sure that everybody knows in the community that the Bedford Library will be reopening for curbside pickup only beginning on Monday, June 8th. We're kind of in the same position that you guys just mentioned, where we haven't even been in the building. So that's part of our problem because we were abiding by the stay home order. So we just haven't even been in there to implement our plan. So we do already have sanitizer, face masks, wipes, those kinds of things for staff, but there's a lot of other things that we have to put into place inside that building in order to ensure the safety of the public once they're allowed in. So beginning on June 8th, it'll be curbside pickup only. I did want to just make sure that I cover all of the bases on here. We will be open Monday through Thursday from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. and Friday and Saturday from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for that curbside pickup. Patrons can place their requests for items by going to the library's website at mymcls.com or calling the library during the hours that I just listed at 734-847-6747. And then staff will contact people regarding their time to come pick up materials. So we will not be letting patrons in. We just want to make sure that everybody understands that at this time until we're all ready to go. We have several things that we need to do, include moving some computer equipment, getting those plexiglass shields installed, signage and floor markings. And again, like Nancy pointed out, I totally agree that a plan should have already been in place, which it has been, but since we haven't been in the building, we couldn't implement that plan until we get in there. And now we're going to have to try to juggle providing some service with implementing that plan. So we need a little bit of time. So bear with us as that happens. I do want to make sure that people understand we will not be taking any donations of materials because I know a lot of people have probably been cleaning out their houses during this time and have a lot of books they might want to give us. And while we truly appreciate that thought, we don't want to have to deal with that as it is. We have to quarantine library materials for 72 hours when they get returned before we can put them out for the public again anyway. So we don't want to have to do that with donations. And I think that was it.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
So much for calling in. We appreciate it.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay. Anybody else have any further comments or anything they'd like to add? Okay. Seeing none, we stand adjourned.